little
priority
tack pause. Yeah, a little tack pause first of the game. So
Yeah, sure.
we'll see. Yeah.
Sure, there's a lot to discuss. The lineup from Alcadzia probably very expected at this stage, though, from Twisted Minds. So they're going to play for the low ground here. That's just the result of them losing that early fight.
Nice
God,
move
Yubi
there.
almost got blown to smithereens as soon as they took that TP. That didn't work at all. Now at least TM, though, can flip the point first. They have that control. Now, Alcadzia's style normally requires them to give up that point control and swoop in on some individuals later on. So it does mean that these rounds get pretty close.
Yeah, that's Immortality Field out already, so you get that one out. Now I think it's time for Alcadzia to potentially up the pace.
Well, they try to, but Felix is kind of the engine room behind that burst of speed, and he's taken down very early by Quartz, who deals with Ziad alongside Funny Astro following that. So Alcadzia's it's an uphill battle sometimes with this D.Va composition. Now they also don't have, a great position to play from, being forced outside the map. So how do they crack this Ramatra, the very defensive Ramatra Sim Cassidy setup?
Well, and we talked a little bit about it, but for, Alcadzia, right? They obviously come into that winter bracket final and they kind of do what they normally do. For Twisted Minds, we saw them play like the Rhine, all different types of stuff. It's like, realistically, there's no bracket reset, right? So it's like, you just need to win this game and that's all that matters. Like, maybe you end up kind of saving your best for this moment if you're TM.
Here's a continued rush down from Alcadzia. Quartz tries to answer it with a Deadeye. See the bowler shot come in, and it doesn't end up bothering him because of the sound barrier laid out by Funny Astro, but it's a later one from Kellex. Alcadzia don't have good positioning. They're caught inside this room, but Twisted Minds are a little split, and KSA is ultimately isolated. Too much Twisted Minds preference, I guess, to play from the higher ground leaves the core of their team off in the side room to be left upon by this mobile D.Va comp.
Yes, this will be a point flip here for Alcadzia. I gotta say, though, Mitch, the Cassidy from Quartz has looked quite good. And when you think about some of the other points remaining, right, a little bit more that like mid to short range, sight lines. I think the Cassidy could get better as this map goes on. So something to keep an eye on here for Twisted Minds as the Cassidy looks good early on. Let's see if they can get this Ram in position, get a good use of the Annihilation, right? A lot of mobility on both teams, so a lot of ways to kind of circumvent it.
Straight to the high ground is the attempt here. KSA, though, either knocked off or steps off. Either way, it's Labda finding Quartz very early on with a symmetrical wall in play. Is that Twisted Minds don't really have a good way to unleash this Cassidy damage. And now they're going to get staggered out. This should be Alcadzia getting close to evening up the game now with the bowler shot and a remake opportunity for Ziad in hand.
Oh, without a doubt, right? I mean, you get an early pick off there on the Quartz. It's like a TP. They use that sim wall. And now you see the TP here used by Yubi, just the amount of space that the Sim TP can cover. Now the Astro's going to need to go, I was going to say go huge with the beat, and never mind. The Bola just detonates everybody.
Ties them all together. All too easy for Lapta to send a couple of extra bolts in. Benefit from that explosive damage, and now we have an even game on our hands. Funny Astro, whose beat would have been critical in that fight, wasn't quite ready to let it go. So now they can combine it with the Annihilation, but there's always the question of how Alcadzia intend to take that high ground. Or maybe they force a fight on the point here. Ant Matrix early, KSA moves away from that sphere of influence, and there's no remake opportunity there for Ziad, but Yubi's caught in the blast, uncharacteristically, and even with the sim wall in play, it might have been a little bit too slow to protect him. Either way, TM spend heavily on this fight. Win it out as Alcadzia get to 90.
Yeah, they get to 90 and they hold on to their sound barrier. A change up here with Landon now going over to the Kiri, so we're gonna up the pace just a little bit as we'll see from Twisted Minds. How do you get a hold here, right? Sound barrier, you're gonna have to like run away, kite this. They actually get aggressive. Maybe they can force this beat out early. That's exactly what they do.
Twisted Minds have to be happy with this, but they don't have a lot else to work with. They're kind of feigning a position of power here. Neither team with big ultimates left. It might be a sim wall for checkmate that could tip the scales in their favor. Ziad, though, has worked his way behind Twisted Minds, and Labda is on the middle of the palace in the center of the map. Tough to get eyes on here, especially now for someone like Quartz, who's limited in that longer range play, and there's a bowler shot ready to go for Labda again. He's developed this so quickly. This could be perfect. All players caught in there. Devastating. Simple caught out. The Immortality Field is not quite enough to keep them standing. Alcadzia, they come up with the goods just when it counts. KSA cleaned up the point quickly enough, and checkmate now zipping around to make sure no one is left standing from the Twisted Minds contingent. And Alcadzia can move the battle lines up, deny any real stall attempt from TM. It's Yubi with a tracer switch that likely comes a little too late. Funny Astro is able to touch down, but he does so dead. And that should be that. Quartz can't get close enough. And Alcancia take a first close round.
Dude, some of these bola shots from Lambda are just crazy, right? That time grouping a few players together, the Immortality Field saves a bunch of them, but they're so low that Ziad just gets in the mix there with Checkmate, who's already pretty charged up on the sim, and there's no way you're keeping those players alive. So the Freya paying off there in round number 1 for Alcacia.
Pretty astonishing showing. This is obviously a map where Twisted Minds try and, force Lambda into an uncomfortable spot by denying the Sojourn. But he seems to be very good there, and it's one of those Freya games that because of her Bounty Hunter passive, she tends to snowball out of control. 4 singular deaths here for Lambda, and obviously a ridiculous amount of damage is vomited into Twisted Minds. Timeout, and again, it's going to be a diva here for KSA this time around, so mirrored in that respect. It still will be Freya v Cassidy, though, is the point of difference.
It seems like Quartz, I mean, really, we saw a little bit maybe in the last series, is they do get Checkmate here, so good start. Really just doesn't seem to, can play the Freya at times, but seems way more comfortable playing whether it is the Cassidy or the Soj, as see here early on. This is a great start for TM.
You definitely feel like you got to look at a dogfight with these mirrored symmetric compositions, and both teams are going to be at some risk when those divas come on in. Really comes about momentum. As these teams try and punish the rather fragile frontlining DPS. Lambda goes over towards the Mei here. Trying to, again, catch people out. Not the Diva so much as maybe a Sim or someone similar. Ziad de-suited very early on, and now Quartz are starting to hit those shots. You teased it in the previous round that the next couple of rounds on this map would definitely suit Cassidy's effective range.
Way better for the Cassidy, and I think you're even starting to see that pay off, where Lambda doesn't maybe want to match in terms of the Cassidy, right? The Soj gone, right? That is what Lambda's really been phenomenal on. And now forced over to a Mei, right? This is a little bit of a different look here. It worked the other day when they were playing like a Reinhardt, right? But with that Diva in the mix, I don't think it's as effective.
It's definitely not the best catch tool against the mobile tank. Here's the TP4 from Alcancia. Symbol defensively, hastily deployed by Yubi. KSA D-Mech, but a chance to climb back in. Now Simple barely alive with the Kitsune Rush ticking and landed. We're down to the blast. We're seeing an inordinate amount of deaths to self-destructs here. And that's because these two teams are not giving each other any space, any breathing room to speak of. Now Alcancia, forced onto this Mei, are struggling in this second round.
It just seems like they just don't have the same amount, obviously close to consistent damage output that Twisted Minds is able to have with that Cassidy in the mix. So you're starting to see some of these early bans coming into effect. It's the first round, obviously was a great sightlines for Freya, like I talked about. But now as we move throughout the map, this is going to start to look really good for the cast.
Here's the push up. Again, Mei wall that really just denies reinforcements instead of catching out the Diva. Quartz into the middle of the map. Deadeye ready. Shut down, though, by Defense Matrix. Ziad quick on that right click, and here's that sim wall now in play. Quartz is trying to navigate it as best he can, and all that Catsier using that to allow them to push up and isolate KSA on the fringes of the map. He stands still, and there's a sound barrier opportunity for Funny. Astra should have been required, and Kellex is out of the game. Quartz is hitting these shots. Catsier taking the fight to Twisted Minds, and that's exactly what their opponents were looking for there. Blizzard now comes down, can't be eaten up, and KSA is frozen stiff. Knocked out of mech, and this is our Catsie's opportunity to work their way back into the fight, but Yubi is hitting very hard. Charged up with another wall developed, and Kellex really has no escape. Sharpshooting from Quartz should account for the Lucio, and he does. Lambda juggled up here. Messy stuff, but Twisted Minds are back in the hot seat.
I mean, Quartz just dominating here on the Cassidy. Funny Astro gets the high ground, deals with checkmate as we are tied here on Oasis. Dude, I mean, this Cassidy just gonna pay off. You can't really even play the Mei here on this final map. Maybe this is slightly better with the Freya for some of the high ground, but should still be pretty solid for the cast.
Especially if you have that point control. You can't necessarily outpoke the Freya if you're playing up on the platform, but we've seen Quartz do very well, really benefiting from the Symmetra walls that Yubi's been throwing up. Allows him to close the gap, get back into that nice little mid-range that Cassidy likes to occupy. We see Lambda has continued to pull on the damage, but it was definitely a round that Cassidy highlighted. Nicely done by Twisted Minds here. Good looks overall. Making this a real game. That's just what we were hoping for. And I love that we get to see these teams throw down in sort of somewhat mirrored compositions here. It's all about that communication when it comes to setting up good sim TPs. Nice little boop there to disrupt Twisted Minds as they stake their claim to the high ground early behind a TP. Yubi and Lambda trade out. Both DPSs, but Alcacia have the point of difference that sim TP is still available to them.
And what do you think about rolling with the Mei here on this point? Again, I think you're probably better off taking your chances with the Freya here, as opposed to trying to run this back with the Mei.
I feel like the D.Va also makes it harder for Freya, especially in those close quarters environments. So it's not just it being a tighter part of the map, but also the potential for the D.Va to really make your life difficult. You see though, there's a couple of decent spots to find catches here. I think the ice block is just important for sustain in some of these dragged out fights. You're relying on Lucio Kiriko healing throughput, and sometimes it's not enough when you've got D.Vas in your face. Simple here, exemplifying this now, is it's been very hard for Twisted Minds to get KSA fighting fit again. There's a sound barrier now for Alcancia. They're not going to give Twisted Minds a chance to recover. Barreling on into this small room. Kellex and Checkmate rack them up. KSA knocked out a mech, and a wall in his way means there's no escape for the D.Va. That's Alcancia, who will stagger him out further.
And you can be that aggressive there for Alcacia when you know you kind of have that advantage in terms of the beat, right? You kind of get the beat, push up on in, and don't just deny Twisted Minds from being able to heal up, gain their support ults, and then come in from that high ground. I really like that decision there from Alcacia.
And they come again, this time Quartz, knowing much of this damage will be mitigated by Defense Matrix, knows he's got to do it anyway. Mabel thrown up for Alcacia. Buys him the ability to get back to this high ground where Quartz does not have good sightlines, especially not now. Simwall attempted to be defeated by a TP. Quartz, though, cannot reposition in order to find connection on the Deadeye. Self-destruct here. A remake for Ziad now as Checkmate's wall finally expires. Alcancia bought themselves some critical moments with that Symmetra ultimate, but now it's time to throw down against the sound barrier. Twisted Minds. Checkmate TPing on either side of the wall, and he finds KSA vulnerable without enough support. Self-destruct attempted, and Yubi's able to take his opposite number down in the sim. It's Labda falling though. KSA back in mech and ready to throw down. That may have been a bunny blaster elimination there after the fact. Ziad got to be knocked out now. KSA fighting fit. That's the engagement that Twisted Minds were looking for. It came down to the sound barrier.
I mean, everybody dumping ultimates into that fight. Yubi holds on to this wall, and you're actually going to have Quartz go over and play the Freya. So with that Mei, right, maybe you feel like you're just kind of getting run down, with the Cassidy, like the Mei and everybody just kind of getting in your face with the TP, where now you can gain this verticality that, well, I was going to say, and they can't really take out, but that is a long-range icicle there, headshot from Labda.
Shades of backbone there from Labda. Now, though, it's easier to cut the Freya out of the game by, ice walling her into a weird spot. Harder to catch her, sure. Harder for her to get involved in the fight against this self-destruct here. Gonna have to be used by Ziad. He's okay. Back in mech now. Checkmate. Oh, you're kidding me,
come on.
Oh, Icarus flew too close to the sun there. Young Wonder Kid ends up undoing himself now as Twisted Minds will have the point flipped back against them, and a sound barrier for both sides means the next fight is going to be a no-holds-barred throwdown for the round.
I mean, that's the Kitsune rush there, and Ziad just stomps. Simple. So, beats to match for both sides. It'll be a Blizzard sim wall advantage here for Alcacia. They're very close. I mean, this is going to be final play.
Biding their time at Twisted Minds. Know the need to win this fight and the next. Maybe hoping to build a bowler shot here for Quartz, but tough to poke down on Alcacia, who have priority. There's KSA down to the low ground briefly. Quartz! Oh, buddy! Has the mobility, fortunate to stay alive, but is knocked out of the fight. This is what I mentioned earlier. How does Quartz get back involved once more? Sound barrier, but of course, Quartz isn't close enough to get it. KSA D-Mech, no chance to climb back in. He is cooked. But Blizzard isn't going to make things any better either. Alcacia finally get a grip on the game in this round. Simple, once again falling, this time at least not to a self-destruct, but as the dust settles, it's your top-seeded team coming out with a